everybody. We are factoring in this lesson. So as you can see, factor review. We actually did this back in August. So if you're referring to old notes, we did this August 19th and August 20th, and basically for a whole week after that. So the first example, it says factor the greatest common factor. That's when they have something in common. So you always factor out what they have in common before you do any other factoring. So it's a reminder how to factor the greatest common factor, GCF. So you look at the terms. Let me switch this to document camera. Okay, so you look at the terms, and if you notice, we have 5, 10, and 20. There's a number that goes into all three of those. It's 5. So part of my greatest common factor is going to be 5. So GCF. But then we have to look, do they all have x's? Well, actually, this has x, this does not have x. So, no, they don't all have x's. We're not going to factor out an x if they don't all have it. Then we look at y. This has a y, this has a y, this has a y. They all have y, which means we're going to factor out a y. You take the smallest y. This is y to the first power, y to the second power, y to the third power. Y is the smallest one. So our greatest common factor is going to be 5y. So looking at our factored form, we're going to have 5y, and then we write the rest in the parentheses. So 5 goes into 5 one time. So I don't really need to write the 1. But if I look at this first term and I take the 5 out and I take the y out, all that's left is an x squared. My symbols don't change because I didn't take out a negative, so I keep the plus sign. Now 5 goes into 10 2 times. And as for variables, I'm only taking one y out. So my x is going to still be there. Since I had y squared, when I take one of those y's out, I'm still going to have a y left behind. This one has a minus sign, so we're going to keep our minus sign. And 5 goes into 24 times. And then there's no x to worry about. We're taking one of the y's out. So there are 3 y's originally. When we take one of the y's out, that means there are 2 y's left. So we write y squared, and we close our parentheses, and that is factoring the greatest common factor. So on the assignment, it's going to ask you what the greatest common factor is, and then it's going to ask you for the factored form, the fully factored form, which means the greatest common factor is part of that answer, times whatever is left when you take it out. Okay? Factoring trinomials, Mrs. Cortez and I taught you what we call the star method. So the star method in factoring trinomials, we have our star. A times C goes on the top. B goes on the bottom. And then you write your AX in the twin spots. And then we know that if it's addition or subtraction based off the sign in front of C, and we need 2 numbers that multiply to the top part and add to or subtract to the bottom part. So just kind of have to remember how to factor trinomial. So that's what this is for. We're reviewing for that. So when factoring these trinomials, I start with my star. Okay. On the top, A times C. On the bottom, B, and then the twin spots is AX and AX. Now this problem, if you notice, doesn't have an A. There's nothing in front of x squared. So I could just split up my x squared into x and x. Since my A is basically an invisible 1, 1 times negative 20 is negative 20, and my B is negative 1. So now I just need to figure out 2 numbers that multiply to negative 20 that subtract to negative 1, and I want to say 5 and 4 would be good ones. So 5 and 4, now we have to figure out where the negative goes. 5 minus 4 is a positive 1. 4 minus 5 is a negative 1. So I put my minus with the 5. And then we look at our fractions. This fraction right here, see if it needs to reduce. It does not reduce. This fraction right here has nothing to reduce. So we write them horizontally. Since this fraction is x over minus 5, we write x minus 5 in parentheses. Since this fraction is x over 4, we write x, and that's a positive 4, so I write x plus 4 in the other parentheses. And that is factoring my trinomial. Okay, so example 3. Draw my star. Okay, start with a times c. So a times c is 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. My b is a positive 3. Now this is, we split up our x, but there's an a. Since there's an a, we put it in front of both x's, like so. So we have 2x and 2x, that's our twin spots. So now we need two numbers that multiply to negative 10 and subtract to a positive 3. So I'm thinking 2 and 5 would be good ones. So 2 and 5. One of them has to be negative to make a negative 10. So I look. 2 minus 5 is a negative 3, not positive. 2 minus 5, yeah, it's negative 3. If I did 5 minus 2, that would be positive 3. So minus 2 makes a positive 3. So then we just look at our fractions. If you notice, this fraction can reduce by 2. If this fraction reduced by 2, 2 goes into 2 one time, which I just write x. 2 goes into 2 one time, but it's negative 1 because that one needs to show up there. Otherwise, there's a negative there with nothing. So we need something there, placeholder, and 1 is that placeholder. This is the fraction we're going to use for the parentheses. This one cannot reduce, so that is what we're going to use for our parentheses. So the first one, we have x over negative 1, which is x minus 1. This one, 2x, positive 5, so plus 5. And that would be your official answer. Okay. Example 4. Let me readjust this so it shows up. Okay, I'm going to draw my star. Okay, got my star. Now, a times c is 24 times 3. So I want to say that is 72. And then b is negative 22. So we have our x and x, but then there's an a, so a goes with that, 24x and 24x. Then we need two numbers that multiply to 72 and subtract negative 22. So sometimes when you get numbers like that, you kind of have to look at all the possibilities. So we have 72, we have 1 and 72, 2 and 36, 3 and 24, obviously. 4, 18. 5 doesn't go into it. 6 goes into it 12 times. 7 doesn't go into 72. 7, 8 times 9. So we have all those possibilities plus the negatives. So negative 1 and negative 72, negative 2, negative 36, etc., etc. Are possibilities. So we need ones that will add to 22. So if we look at these, add to 73. These add to 38. These add to 27. These add to 22. That's what we need, 22. 4 and 18. But it makes a negative 22. The only way 4 and 18 can make a negative 22 is if they're both negative. 4 and 18. So now we have to look at our parentheses. And I'm going to use a different color for this. So, see if it reduces. Well, 4 actually does reduce. 4 goes into itself once and into 24 6 times. So we actually get 6x over a negative 1. Here, 6 goes into 24 and 18 6 goes in 18 3 times, and 6 goes into 24 4 times. So the new fraction there would be 4x over negative 3. Okay, so we're going to make those our horizontal parentheses. 6x minus 1 and 4x minus 3. Okay, so that is factoring. This is probably the hardest problem. Although you do have some problems that actually ask for the list, so you'll fill that in. They actually give you one side of it and you write the other side of it, and then the sums do the adding. So that is factor review. Have a good day.